it's not just the quality of the idea growing, it's the experiences you've had with the people to get that idea there. Yeah, sometimes it's a unilateral vision for something, and sometimes happy accidents happen, and sometimes you see something that sparks another idea. But either way, that spontaneity with a group of people that leads to a better result, that alchemy or whatever, there's something incredibly rewarding about getting there with a group of people. It's what comes organically out of the shared collective experience, you know?
A garden of pure ideology.
Yeah, just your typical Super Bowl car ad.
Or a hilarious beer ad.
Break was over 15 minutes ago, Mitch!
I think you're the best ever.
I think we're gonna be here a while.
Welcome back to Filmmakers and Advertising. Yep, still me today. I'm Justin Rossbacher, standing in for Cody Wilson. Today, I have Darren Foldes. Darren got his start in turn of the millennium, producing and writing for MGM and VH1, and then moved on into head of sales and EP at Green Dot, and Caviar, and Pulse Films, and now at Sibling Rivalry. And he is a partner and head of films. So good to have you here on the show today.
Yeah, lovely to be here. Excited to talk to you. I'm a fan of the podcast, and so yeah, it's good to be talking today. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm curious, did you grow up wanting to be involved in production or to tell stories, or like you have kind of a
tell stories for
career,
sure. It was a little bit of more about leaving New York, trying something new, and the opportunity that was present that also meshed with what I loved and appreciated, which was telling stories in film, and that's where the opportunity was. But there was also an opportunity for music, and I kind of felt like at the moment, at least, and I think I made the right choice in a weird way, is that I had the awareness to know that I loved music so much that I didn't want to spoil it by understanding how the sausage was. Storytelling from a filmic and or in a narrative sense, whatever, was number two, and I for me, and I just that was. And that's where the better opportunity was as well. So I'm not sure if it was really, I can fully take credit for like making that choice, although I kind of thought about it at the time. And then the other thing was, it's funny, growing up in and around New York City, so many of my friends ended up going to, following their parents' footsteps and working on Wall Street in some capacity. And that just wasn't in the cards for me. I wasn't that person. And I didn't, my dad was a cameraman for ABC Channel 7 News in New York City when I was growing up. And I say cameraman, not DP, because he was the cameraman. And, it was always like, I don't know, it was narrative, story, visual, like it was just what I was exposed to and thought about, I guess, in a sense. And I also reached this point where I couldn't, as I was approaching the end of college, I just couldn't figure out how to picture myself as an adult in the same city or geographic region that I was a kid in. I just couldn't get my head around making that transition. And when the opportunity came to, opened up to get a paid internship, if I remember correctly, at Copelson in LA, I pounced,
Yeah.
because I just, is the other thing, like which we talked about briefly before, is that just like the idea of making these like, films with resources that also had an edge, which you're starting to see again, right? I mean, there's been films over the years, few and far between, that have always done that in some capacity, but I feel like franchises are seemingly starting to dip a bit, and people are making more interesting content again, or hopefully at least.
Yeah, I hope so too. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And then, so you got this internship in LA, and then you continued on kind of in the narrative and TV space, right, for a bit?
I did. I was probably like 27, 28, co-wrote a kids film for MGM, for MGM, and then co-wrote and produced that one, and then produced another one in a very short period of time. And I didn't like it at all. It didn't agree with me. And it was partially because what got greenlit, and where, what the money was going to pay for getting made was not something that I was particularly in love with in a conceptual sense. But the process, to me, I do respect tremendously people that, and I have quite a few friends who still are doing incredibly well in features and TV, and their patience and intellects and taste level are all things that I admire. For me, I guess I just didn't love the amount of time it took and the expectation of when the next thing might happen. And I didn't come from a family with a ton of money. And so there was always something a bit practical in how I viewed what was next. And I kind of had this moment where I was like, well, I don't know what's next exactly, although I am relatively young for having produced a couple films. So, things should be fine. To me, I felt like, try something new. I have my studio writing credit. Let's see what I could do with that, because the writing part of it was something I enjoyed at the time more than the producing part of it. And I felt like doors would open. So if I could find a way to fund myself, my life, and, have something a bit more stable so I could start a family and, embrace the things that I was, seemingly thinking were on the horizon that I wanted to prioritize more than simply a career, again, at the time. But still now, by the way, that last part, I mean, those are the most important things to me, or, my family, friends, et cetera. But like, I think that, it was an opportunity open for me to switch to advertising, and a friend brought me in, and I didn't quite understand exactly what repping commercial production company meant. To me, it was being kind of like a manager, not quote unquote more of a salesperson. What happened very quickly, though, was the refreshing nature of the feed the machine mentality in advertising, and the efficiency and speed. Not only was my real first brush with 20th century or 21st century dopamine hits, but I also felt that people were a bit more honest in advertising relative to film and TV, because it is a feed the machine mentality in a certain sense. Things have to move relatively quickly. And it's, to a large degree, it's actually sped up. I mean, with social media,
you don't have time to lie. You have to just be honest.
Well, there's no time.
We have a budget. We don't have a budget. We got to get it done. Is this the right team? Is this the right director?
Exactly
is this
right.
Like, you just got to move forward and make
You got to move forward, and you don't. There's a lot of times you have conversations with people in quote unquote, let's call it Hollywood, where they don't necessarily even know that their deal is dead, right? That nothing's going to get produced through the relationships and funding and deals that they have in place. So you may take 3 lunches in a year with someone that is nothing is going to come out of that relationship, right? So in advertising, when a board hits your the fax machine, your inbox, you're sitting on something that has absolutely legitimate potential to get made, right? So if you have the right director for that project, there's a very good chance that there's a lot of directors out there, so the odds aren't amazing, but they're real, right? So I think that was what I largely became very addicted to, was the efficiency of it, and the feed the machine mentality, and the fact that people were, whether consciously telling the truth or not, it was, you felt like it was something you could sink your teeth into.
Yeah.
So
that's good. Well, I mean, that's where my curiosity was going. You already answered a lot of kind of where my mind was as far as the major difference, but also that I'm still curious about the transition. You literally just had a friend that was like, hey, try this out, or
a
what?
good friend of mine, Rich Pring, he runs a company called Reverie with his partner Kathleen. They're amazing. He was a head of production. He was the head of production at a company called Green Dot Films, who it was owned and run by Brett and Jane Thomas. Brett was an art director on the 1984 Apple spot. Jane is a brilliant woman, leader, and they were a wonderful husband-wife team, incredibly generous, thoughtful, et cetera, and they, embraced someone who came from outside to come in and take a shot at things, and Rich was like, why don't you try this? Like you've talked me into a lot of things in our personal lives, and maybe you can, like make some things happen here, and knowing that you want to focus on writing and, other things, like this is a way you can make some money, and it's a win-win situation, right? Because maybe our company benefits and people work more, and you have the stability of having this behind you. And I was like, love to try it, and I literally, I mean, I don't use this word there was like a legitimate love for the idea. I was going to say an addiction to the business, but it was real, because I always wanted to, I guess going back to the Wall Street portion of things, I don't necessarily know that I wouldn't have been good at it. I think I love the idea of doing something where I could problem solve, be creative, utilize craft, and also have stability and make some money, right? And I didn't recognize, I understood film and music as that, and television, whatever, production, but I didn't really understand the world of advertising, as most people who get into it would probably echo. And I think being exposed to it was this, eye-opening experience of, wait a second, this feeds the competitive side that I just have to win, because you're bidding against other people and directors and companies and whatnot. I do enjoy money. This is a business after all, and I like being creative and utilizing craft to tell stories and make interesting things and do things that haven't been done before. And and also, be honest with you, there's something about the empathetic ability to connect with people that you care about, and be in this, boat together or whatever, to, feel like you're doing it your way, and you're charting your own course, and you're making something, and you're finding a way to be sustained and solvent and stable, but also satisfied in your creative desires, right? That combination of things to do with a group of people is incredibly rewarding, I have to say, so.
Yeah, absolutely.
So all of that, it was just this, not to be corny, man, but it was just it was a huge moment for me, those first 3 months of that, of realizing that was pretty, I was addicted to it very quickly. I knew what I wanted to continue to do,
Yeah.
So anyway.
And so you jumped in, and you said within 3 months you're really feeling this sensation and becoming addicted to it. But you're jumping in as EP and head of sales right off the bat,
Not at all. No. So
okay.
I not at all. No,
I was
not even close. I was so.
How does that work?
So I was
It
still
doesn't work
telling
that way.
myself
Got
I
it.
was a manager. No, I actually didn't even give a shit about that. I was repping the West Coast for Green Dot Films, and then after maybe 6 months or so.
But when you're repping them, and you don't have any experience as a rep up at this point in time.
No. I had this.
So what does that mean? You're calling, or you're just taking calls, or what?
I was calling, I was emailing. I had this amazingly thoughtful boss named Alex Anderson, and he was so good at prioritize or figuring out what about an idea would resonate with the director and vice versa. And there's a lot of passion there. And he gave me the opportunity and kind of just encouraged me to, both like, I think we used to always say it was blue collar work ethic, white collar ideas when the opportunity opened for you to share those things. And the idea is that, like, I guess people often say, like, you the harder you work, the luckier you are, or whatever. But it's like there is something that could be said for dialing for dollars back in the day, right? Or emailing a ton of people as long as you're not crossing a line, and trying to get someone on the hook. And we were not. I mean, we had very talented directors, very smart directors. We were not a company with a tremendous amount of mojo relative to other companies in the industry. So we had to work incredibly hard to get people to see how good and how much of a match some of our folks were for their projects, right? So I was not shy, and I was enjoying it so much that I worked really hard relative, I think, from what I've heard to other people, and I wanted it to work, and Brent and Jane, Rich, a guy named Rick Fishbein, Beth. I mean, there were so many wonderful people I worked with over the years over there, and they all, like, supported me and let me go and get it. And I started West Coast repping, and then it became Midwest and West Coast repping, and then it became, there was a few directors that I had known from my days, quote unquote, in Hollywood, that wanted to join after a couple of years, and I had my feet under me, and they came over and they're like, well, I don't understand, you're selling me, but why are you not producing for me? I want you to produce for me too. I know you know how to produce. And then so it was a very natural transition to, well, okay, these directors that I'm bringing in want me to be their EP as well. And then I just started EPing as well. And I will say this, like, it's I love both, but I do love seeing a project all the way through to completion. I get incredibly satisfied by finishing something. There's a couple projects over my career that really stand out as, like, okay, that really was never done before. And the fear in those instances never really overwhelmed, but were motivators. And there's something about pouring your heart and soul, all of your brain power, experience, with a group of people, director, your head of production, which I have the best one in the world right now, named Kara. Like, when you can pour everything into an idea and not just win the job or the project, but do it better than the people you just beat on the project would expect you to do, when they see it, and they can't say anything other than, wow, fuck, you smashed that. That is a high, right? That is, and then of course, it'll win some awards, or, you'll get some repeat business, and you build close relationships with the creatives and the client, and you're off to the races, and the rest is history. But the real fun is knowing you've just done something that hadn't been done before, and you smashed it, right? So that was, that's what the calling and the emailing and the conversations was geared towards, right? It was making money, but it was also like, we're gonna be here. We've got the next 3 weeks or month or whatever to figure this thing out. I mean, fuck, let's make it as good as it can be, right? And that's what you pour into every situation, I think, is that attitude and that belief system. And I often say, like, if we were to be a restaurant, the goal would be to make food so good that it makes your eyes roll back in your head when you take your first bite. But you can't always be that to everyone. In some situations, sometimes the ingredients don't show up the way as high quality as they're supposed to. And, sometimes there's a million things that can change along the way, right? And but you do your best, right? You do your best to make the best dish you can make, but you also make the experience incredibly pleasurable and enjoyable and intimate and rewarding for everyone involved, because you value people and their careers and their trajectory and their goals and their life, and you give a shit about that because it's real, right? You give a shit about that because these things matter to everyone involved. And if we're going to continue on in this business and keep doing what we do, we have to find the humanity. We have to be inventive. We have to work collectively. We have to allow for an egalitarian structure where best idea wins. It's incredibly important, I think, where we are in the generative sense to, lean into everyone's strengths and allow the best idea to win, as I mentioned, and encouraged, people to strive for great, in the age-old adage of, good is the enemy of great, right? It's like, how do we get there, and how do we set people up to feel confident and comfortable to share their ideas? And I found over the years that it's so rewarding to support people in a way where they're coming from a place of confidence and comfort, and they feel a safety net. And because there's so many times I've been in a room where I had a thought about something and someone shared something, and either it gave me another idea or what they shared was fucking brilliant, right? And once that happens to you once, you want people to come from a space where they're empowered to share their best ideas. And the only way to do that, whether they're someone who's hierarchically above you or below you, is to create a safe space for creativity, not to create an intense pressure cooker, right? And, whether or not, and I think in my gut, love and kindness always have won the day from when I was a young kid, but the realization from a transactional or pragmatic standpoint that people will do a better job for you if they feel supported and safe and comfortable. As it's a realization you uncover over time. And I wish more people, and look, we're very lucky. We work in a business with tremendously, in my opinion, generous and kind and thoughtful leaders. But there's always more room, right? There's always room to be better and more thoughtful and more generous to the next generation, and teach a woman to fish, not give them one, or we'll give them one too, but or a man, whatever. It's important, I think, to, at a time where post-COVID, less people have offices, less people are going into the office every day of the week. You don't, you're on Zooms and things like that, but isn't it the 5 minutes after the Zoom, or Google Meet or what, Teams or WebEx or whatever, where you read someone's body language and you have a conversation about it, that the most growth happens, right? And those conversations aren't happening as much. And I think we're living in a time, at a moment in history where it feels like dishonesty and maybe lack of empathy and kindness and care, it feels like the wrong attributes are being rewarded. And I think a lot of people feel that. And I think as a leader, if I could be so bold and call myself one, it's important, incredibly important, I think, to not just complain about the way things have shifted a little bit, but actually do those things yourself and give people the framework to potentially set themselves up to be able to afford a house at a time where property values have gotten so tremendously expensive, where, you know, anxiety about the imminent doom that AI brings, which, you know, by the way, like, I think it is what it is. It's a tool, and it's only going to get to be better of a tool. And who knows, like, if it does turn into hell, and, you know, or whatever, then, you know, that's going to happen, and we're going to deal with it. But at the end of the day, like, there is a future in this, and there is a future for people in this business, and we have to set them up for success, and we have to empower them to grow creatively. So
The level of resonance of everything that you're saying just, you know, hits my soul and delights me to hear. And I totally agree. One of our values at our company is generosity, and that's so important. And we even have vulnerability as one of our values too.
I think it's so important. Yeah, it's a great.
Yeah, and it's kind of overlapping. In many ways, you are being generous by being vulnerable too. Like, you have to be, like, real as far as, like, where you're at, and allowing other people to have a safe place. And by being vulnerable, you're creating a safe place as well. And
exactly right. It's perfectly said. Yeah. Look, I mean, I love that, and I do think, you know, what we try to do is, you know, there's a hell of a lot of time that leads up to being on set, right? And treatments have become, you know, publishable, like, in the few bookstores that remain. They're so fucking good and detailed and thoughtful and beautiful and whatnot. But along the way, if you're encouraging people to contribute ideas throughout that process, it's remarkable how much can be shared on an email chain or a Slack chain or a text chain or WhatsApp. I think back to college, and you know, there were times for sure where I got really far down the road on a term paper or whatever, and somewhere along the way saw a different take on it, and if I had the time, would have gone back and ripped it up and started over again, but didn't. And then there were other times where I fucking did, where I was like, you know what, this is more right, way more right, and actually, like, I love this, and I'm gonna start over. And again, it doesn't have to be that dramatic, right? I'm being, like, for emphasis, like, being a little dramatic, because sometimes it's a paragraph, or it's a, you know, a production design element, or it's a thought about a motif or something in a campaign or whatever. But to be able to remain flexible to that best idea, and hearing it and encouraging an egalitarian structure, doing our best. Look, everyone's got an ego, but, like, I happen to be very lucky, and have been lucky at prior companies as well, to work with people that are open and creative and listen in the ways that make the work better, right? And so I think, yeah, if it's on set, sure, it's a little more difficult, and it's usually a text message or a whisper. But yeah, I mean, there's so many other times in the process where it can come out.
Makes sense. I love the story too. Bryan Cranston on Seinfeld. Have you heard this?
No.
So he played the dentist character that ended up becoming a reoccurring character, you know, long before he was, you know, Walter White in Breaking Bad.
Yeah.
Amazing. And one of my favorite moments is just before he put Seinfeld under, like, he gives him the gas, like the laughing gas or whatever. He takes a whiff himself before putting it onto Seinfeld. And of course, Seinfeld's like, what?
Yeah, totally.
So it's very funny, but that was never scripted. And it was just Bryan Cranston, like, rehearsing in between, like, setups, and he was, like, by himself, but all of a sudden he hears this voice of a lighting tech up in the corner that's, like, rearranging a light, and he goes, you know what would be funny?
That's great.
If you took a whip first, and it was so genius. He's like, absolutely.
That's brilliant. That is, and that sums it up better than anything I could have, like, exactly. That's exactly it.
Yeah,
and like,
exactly.
It's, look, I don't consider myself a writer anymore or whatever, but I do understand why writers sit in a coffee shop, because you see someone's presence or overhear some, or whatever it is, right? A dynamic, and it inspires something meaningful, right? And it's remarkable how often something can be introduced to you that feels like the universe is opening up, not to, be corny or whatever, but like where something just happens at the right time, or you're utilizing what's given to you and adapting it to what the problem you're trying to solve. If you stay open to things, it's remarkable how many opportunities will arise.
Yeah, absolutely love that. Some people may, just to kind of take a little bit of a bend, some maybe more cynical idealists would look at the advertising industry and wonder what good does it really do? Just us trying to just get people to buy more things. What good do you think the industry does? You talked about as far as like the interpersonal way, like other people you're making the stuff with and how you're enriching each other's lives. But in the broader sense of like,
Look,
what good does the ad industry do in the world?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, Michael Sagal, guy I used to work with for years at Caviar, who I have a tremendous amount of respect and love for, would often joke, like, in a poignant way, like, we're saving the world one ad at a time, right? And, obviously that goes a little far, right? That's why it's funny, but like, it feels like that sometimes, that's for sure. But, the economy makes the world go round in a major sense, right? It's essential, but also like there's a tremendous amount of good that is done by brands in the ad world. Corporation, let's just call them business, whatever. I mean, there's so many organizations that have been funded by or stem from, bigger brands. And look at the Patagonias of the world. I mean, there's just so much there. And also people that have made their wealth working at some of these corporations who have decided to go on and do other things with that wealth. There's two ways to approach it, right? In life, I think, is to start out of the gate and immediately give back. And you can do that while you're also building a career and making money and all that stuff. Or you wake up later in life and, I don't necessarily know the one's better than the other. Like you might reach this point in life where you have a tremendous amount of fuel behind you, so to speak, and you could do more, from a make the world go around standpoint, economically speaking. I think there's an educational aspect as well to advertising. Like, you look at, we had done quite a few of the early iPhone commercials the first 4 or 5 years. That technology was delightful. I mean, even the iPod Nano and iPads and stuff like that, there was a certain level of edutainment from seeing what at the time, and still is in a large sense, a magical piece of technology. When you think back on all that stuff, you can add tremendous value to people's lives by showing them how to do something. And I think, there's value in that. That's a tough question, man. It's a good one.
And I'm always curious to know, because deep down, I think we don't always ask that specific question, but in general, if we're doing this on a day-to-day basis and enjoy it, we really believe that it does good. So it's like that's down there. Like we know it in our soul. So to be able to verbalize it, I think is like a very interesting exercise.
Yeah, for sure. No, I love that. It's a good way to put it. Yeah.
And so when I think about like, why does art itself, like it's not practically useful, and this is actually useful, but art itself is not necessarily oftentimes in itself, like this painting that exists, like, does it help me eat or fund myself? But no, I had an existential experience with beauty with it. Right. And therefore, like my soul is better off, and therefore the way I interact with the world is better off. And so it is that way. So any movie that moves me in a way that helps me create empathy, that's a big theme of yours, is something that I think there's a value in the world just because of that. And so many of advertising, whether it be funny or whether it be emotionally pulling, but we are creating these many forms of art that I've experienced. Like, I've never bought a Volvo, but I have been benefited by watching Volvo commercials.
Sure.
My soul is better off as a result of that being made and me consuming it. Like,
Yeah. No, I feel you. I mean, I look at that painting over your shoulder. I mean, I feel a connection to it in a weird way. There's something, and what it is, is
yeah, literally, it was the first thing you said when we came on. You're like,
yeah.
"What, that painting?"
There's humanity to it, right? And I think what you were just talking about, though, not necessarily in that painting, but like, is I don't think anyone like says I would like a moment now where I don't feel alone in this world. But when someone taps into an idea, whether it be like comical or emotionally resonant, that makes you feel you are not alone, that there's a connection to something universal or even just another human being, that is a recharge, right? That is Godzilla and electricity, that whatever you want to call it, that is like, it's important, right? And I think at its best, storytelling can, whether it be advertising based, musically, features or TV, or even in a book, like it creates a connection or allows you to either let your guard down or evolve, right? And improve and become more actualized, or whatever words you want to use, but like it's the freedom to grow, right? Or the freedom to connect and feel safe and then therefore grow, right? Or whatever it is. Yeah, I think storytelling has tremendous value in that sense. I was talking about this with someone recently, like huge lover of music. If I were to be considered a savage beast, it definitely tames me. There's songs that I still love from my childhood that take on I don't want to say a different meaning. I just don't know that I even necessarily understood them when I was a kid, right? And musically, they appealed to me on some level. There was some emotion or something tapped into on a universal level at its core that was timeless. And now that I'm an adult and I hear that song again, and not only is it nostalgic and warm and comforting, but the words actually fucking speak to me, And it's like, wow, how did that happen, right? Like, how did something like connect with me before I even knew what it was? And there's something created by a band or an individual or whatever that it summed up the thing, the emotion, the thought, the idea so well in its presence that the lyrics were just the cherry on top or the exclamation point, right? Because it did it, right? It did it on its own. And that's what I love about music in particular, right? Is that it's like having a conversation, really, with yourself or with someone else or whoever. And I do that all the time, listening to music, and an idea will occur to me from listening to something that shapes my whole day or week or how I approach a relationship, or a challenge in life or something.
And how does that overlap into the advertising world for you as far as that similar kind of concepts?
Yeah, I think, for me, the real joy and the connection, yes, creating beautiful, stunning work that is inventive and is uplifting. Like there's two pieces in particular, I think, over the years that I've worked on that had never been done before, that I think bring tremendous joy to people when they see them, or at least have over the year. There was the Apple Bound spot directed by Oscar Hudson that I executive produced one of the Pulse, and then the Nike You Can't Stop Us spot that also was directed by Oscar Hudson that I executive produced while I was at Pulse. And, those were things that when you saw them, like in their written form in a deck, were so much bigger than just the words on the page. But how big they became was because you have a visceral, instantaneous reaction to something that you read. And it's in your gut, and it's in your brain, and then it's in both together, and then one wins and the other whatever. And then you come together, and then it grows, and then it like You break it down, you build it up, whatever. And then all of a sudden you know, maximize resources you have and the ideas and all the things. And if you were to able to go back to that first reaction you had and think about it, it's not just the quality of the idea growing, it's the experiences you've had with the people to get that idea there. And I think empowering your crew is something, there's a consciousness about setting your team up with knowledge of what you want to do in the most clear way so that they can go off and do what they do best, right? Is bring things back to you, or that going back to that best idea wins thing. Yeah, sometimes it's a unilateral vision for something, and sometimes happy accidents happen, and sometimes you see something that sparks another idea. But either way, that spontaneity with a group of people that leads to a better result, there's something incredibly rewarding about getting there with a group of people that transcends, it can transcend the finished product. That relationship might lead to 20 more things over the next 10 years or 5 years or 2 years. It's what comes organically out of the shared collective experience, and you start to build a shorthand and a trust and all the things. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It's beautiful. So we've kind of talked about a lot of the good that happens. What's an area that you wish would improve about this industry, or areas that it's gone wrong that you're looking to kind of be different and go against the flow to help lead that charge?
It's interesting. I think empowering the next generation to succeed, to not just survive, but to thrive, to be given the tools and the freedom and the abilities and the financial means to experience and enjoy what previous generations have. I think it's always important to be conscious of that and think about that stuff. I think there's tremendous people globally that are craftsmen and women that, whether it be production designers or DPs or wardrobe designers, costume designers, stylists, whatever. I think there's people all around the globe that are wonderful, but I love shooting in California. I love being in Los Angeles, and I love the commitment to the city and the state that the commercial production industry has made. And I do think, one thing we could be doing better for these people that we care so much about is apply and establish a tax credit system for advertising-based projects in California. Because, this is something people have been talking about, behind the scenes, and there's been some articles recently where the tax credits for film and TV projects, mainly film projects really, were doubled by the state, by Governor Newsom, to $750 million. And none of that goes to ad-based projects. And I think, or ad-funded projects. And so much of how people get into this industry or sustain themselves between big feature films or whatever are advertising-based projects. And
makes sense. The title of our podcast is Filmmakers and Advertising.
Yeah.
So that's what we're trying to explore here.
Yeah. So I do think it's something that we shouldn't stop talking about, that we need to continue to talk about, that we need to make known and felt. I think restaurants and Uber drivers and obviously everyone on the hired crew, but in the community at large in Los Angeles and in the state of California would benefit tremendously from these tax credits, right? As an industry, from a post-production and live action production standpoint, companies have made a tremendous commitment to the state. And you see companies, studios, whatever, moving thousands of people to other states or countries based upon tax credits and savings. And I think the commitment we made to the state warrants a serious look at the value and the integrity of what everyone in our industry has done to focus on maintaining a core community of quality craftspeople that know exactly what they're doing. They're trustable, reliable, and capable of making beautiful things, and they're also great people. It's something that I think our state and elected officials should be really aware and conscious of, and seriously consider going into 2027, because obviously everything's laid out for this year already. But I do think it's something that we should figure out how to make happen in the ad business. You know?
Yeah, I'm interested in that prospect as well. So yeah,
Yeah.
that sounds cool. Shifting directions just a little bit, going into a little bit of from listeners that are still trying to either start their career or continue to move forward. Like, what's a common mistake that you see a lot of people in the industry make that tends to hold people back?
Wow, that's an interesting question. I think, it's the kind of business where you should ask questions, right? Like, I think depending on maybe your social media feed or what your older brothers and sisters or your parents or whatever, it's like, fake it till you make it. Or it's like, okay, maybe a little bit, but like, realistically ask questions, like, don't be afraid. I think I encourage my team to ask questions, and quickly, right? It's not, sure, try to find the answer, and you may have to go off and find the answer, because there may not be a readily known, an available answer for that question, because maybe it's something that's never been done before, like we were talking about earlier. But I do think asking questions is so important to this business. I think people can go off and waste a day thinking about something or worrying about something or going down the wrong path when you're on a 3-week schedule or whatever is a lot of time, right? And the more of a well-oiled machine we can all be collectively, the better. And people want you to ask questions, right? So that would be one thing.
Okay, that's great. And then on the other end, and it can be the same answer, that's great. What tends to impress you as far as anybody in the industry, whether it be a director, whether it be another producer, whether it be a client, like what is like, okay, that got my attention. I appreciate that.
Yeah. So for me, the thing that I think impresses me the most about people is people that know how to, you can't do everything. No, whether you're on the agency side or production company side, you can't be everywhere at once. So you have to be very clear in terms of, if you're a department head, what the intentions are. And I think doing it in a way that empowers people with, there's a few directors I worked with over the years who will remain nameless, and it's been a long time since I worked with anyone like this, led through fear, right? And I think rarely said thank you or showed any appreciation. And I don't think that's the way to the best work, right? I think people are at their best when they understand what they're meant to go off and do. And I think anxiety and stress, which is a part of life, both are a part of life, but there's a healthy version of those things. And the healthy version of those things allow you to figure it out, as opposed to the unhealthy version that oftentimes comes from someone, hammering down on you or whatever, and you're looking for the solution with a level of stress that you may overlook it, or you may not have the confidence in what you've uncovered, or even, you may not see it. I think it's important to be clear, and I think it's important to be patient and kind.
Yeah, no, it's beautiful. The idea of the combination of clarity and giving appreciation, which you also kind of worded as far as like kindness. Yeah. And kindness is a good word. I don't feel like we use that word.
I love the notion of kindness. I think that, I was talking to someone recently, and I look, nice is better than not nice, but nice isn't as good as kind.
No,
kind is to me, kindness is sharing love, and niceness is a defense mechanism to gain a little, freedom maybe of criticism or something coming back at you. Like, I think, like, to me, kindness is how you constructively criticize someone or show love or support someone when they need to be supported. But the goal is, it's not about you, it's about what the other person maybe
that's good.
needs, if that makes sense. Like, and really again, who are you to say what another person needs? However, if someone needs to feel the confidence to be themselves, help them get there. Or if someone needs the knowledge to help them be their best selves. Give them that knowledge. And shine a light on the things that they're great at. Don't force them to do the things that they're not great at. And decimate their self-esteem along the way, which I've seen some people in this business do, or any business for that matter do, where it's like, well, this is their weakness and I can't help but poke it. It's like, yeah, I've had it happen where I've had a bruise on my arm and I keep touching it. I'm like, why the fuck am I touching this bruise? It hurts, And I think some people do that psychologically as well.
I think you're right.
To other people, So
that's good. That really got my mind thinking. The niceness is more about a self-image that you're giving. Like, I want to appear in a certain way, so I'm going to be nice. It's not always honest. It's not always straightforward. But kindness does seem to be more others-oriented. Like, kindness is how someone has received something, and you can be honest and straightforward and even blunt and be kind. Like,
Totally.
actually, I appreciate blunt kindness. Like, I want that. I yearn for it. I tell my colleagues, I tell my collaborators, I was like, I need you to be straightforward. I mean, I appreciate
1,000%.
kindness. Like, you want the best for the project, you want the best for each other, but you gotta be straightforward.
Well, and also, this is a huge thing for me in life. Giving is becoming so much more rewarding than receiving, and not expecting anything in return is so fucking important. And I think kindness is about a love for people and other things and their growth and their experience and their joy and their confidence in their futures, right? And I think it's really important to have that be something that you, in a radical way, make a priority in your where you're coming from, in your agenda on life. And it's got to be part of the framework, part of the backbone, whether visible or not, right? It's important. So.
Indeed, yeah. And it reminds me, one of my favorite authors is C.S. Lewis in the Chronicles of Narnia, but, they're asking about Aslan and who is this person? And, oh, he's a lion? Oh, no, he's a lion. Is he safe? And the answer is no, he's not safe, but he is kind.
Yeah.
And it's like, ooh,
Yeah.
just like gets my soul. It's like, no, he has great power. He could destroy you. He could
Totally.
he could rule, an entire, type of aspect, but he's kind. I'm like, well, that actually is so much more important. And that is an amazing value. So, yeah.
Well, you see it with dogs, like we were talking about before, like,
Yeah, that's
some
true,
dogs,
dogs.
I mean, like they're capable of potentially great destruction, but
Oh yeah,
if
my
they're
dog could
kind-
kill me every night if he really wanted. Like, he
Absolutely.
has the capabilities. Like,
Yeah. But he's kind.
He's kind. Yeah, absolutely. That's amazing. I love too what you're talking about as far as leading with kindness and empathy, but how, in a very practical way, I'm going to go back to something you said much earlier in the interview, how sometimes in the meeting, whether it be Zoom meeting or in person, it's the 5 minutes before, the 5 minutes after. And I think in order to be empathetic, to have kindness, especially in a leadership role, is to create margin, to not always be in a hurry to the very next thing and be calculated and the next things happen. But because you had the margin, and to not rush out, to be observant and to engage and like, hey, what's going on? Like, I noticed, this type of aspect. And that's the period of time in which there's that breakthrough. And sometimes we don't listen to that voice because we don't even hear that voice. So sometimes we don't hear that voice because we're such in a hurry. And so we're just like ones and zeros everywhere. And then we create the margin for it. And then sometimes we don't listen to that, to engage in that way with empathy or with vulnerability and such. And we have that opportunity in the workplace, even, depending, it's not that we're creating therapy for everybody, but we find healing through relationship. We're in each other's lives always, like.
Absolutely. And also, like, there's from a practical, pragmatic, and efficiency standpoint, the more you understand the why something is happening or why something is great or why something is borderline worthwhile even, the better you could collectively be at making decisions or go off and do your own thing and report back or like whatever it is. Like you the more you're connected, the better you function as a team.
Yeah. Preach it. No. All right. Well, what's going on that coming down the future that's lighting you up right now? It could be personal, it could be work related. Like,
I talked about my love for music earlier.
oh, that's right. Well, you've got quite the background here. DJing throughout. Now, are you? I saw that in my research on you that you've been DJing. Is that something you're continually doing? It seems like you've definitely seemed to do it for some celebrities.
Yeah, there's always this thought. There's always a percentage of me that's like, well, I could either stream this song or I could purchase it. And if I purchase it, then I could, drop it into Serato and play it out next time I DJ, even though that next time hasn't come for a year. Like it's been, a long time since I've actually DJ'd out or come out of quote unquote retirement to do it. But I still purchase so much music because, you can't, it's just the way the software works now. And I have a tremendous amount of vinyl as well, but I'm too old to carry that shit. I put this, it's I don't know, somewhere around 850 songs of my favorite, like whether guilty pleasures or ironic pieces of joy or just like music that I think is exceptional together recently, and been sharing it around with friends as a playlist. And
can we put it on our show notes?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I give it an explicit lyric warning, and as well as a thematic warning, because some of it is just, stuff that I listened to in 7th or 8th grade that was at a different time. And I don't necessarily agree with the values or the words uttered or whatever, but like, there's a musical quality to certain things that just stay with you and are nostalgic in some way. But yeah, like absolutely. I just cultivating that and sharing that with friends, like, is so rewarding. I think the people that share music with you are some of the most important people in your life,
Absolutely.
So
now, how did the DJ thing, just to bring this back there, how did that start, and then like how did it lead to like DJing for Prince and other things like that?
Yeah,
listeners, he's no joke here. Like it's actually.
I'm blushing. Fortuitously, it just kind of happened. I was DJing one night and
in LA?
In LA.
Yeah, okay.
I'd been DJing for 10 or so years at this point.
What type of event was it? What kind of space?
It was a De La Soul show, who I am a huge fan of, and was and still am. And, it was at the now obsolete or no longer in existence House of Blues on Sunset in LA. And I was on stage and played and then was brought upstairs. There was a room called the Foundation Room, and I'm sure some people remember that. And I was DJing up there, and someone came over and said, will you stay? And we're going to do something in the back room, and for musical artists, and it's going to start around 3 a.m. and probably go to after sunrise. And I was like, that is intriguing. That is a conversation I would have had in New York. That's not a conversation I've had in LA yet. And so I was like, yeah, let's do it, And up until the moment Prince walked in the door and walked over to me, I had no idea it was going to be for him. They didn't tell me. So it was pretty mind-blowing. And I just remember, like, I've told this story before, but like, I'll never forget this. It was like, walked over, barely said anything, but other than keep it sexy, keep it cool, and put The Wizard of Oz on the DVD player and left. And then came back about an hour later. Some of his friends started arriving halfway between when he left and when he came back, and I was DJing for them, and everyone was dancing and stuff like that, and The Wizard of Oz was in the background. It was so incredibly surreal. Like it was mind blowing, and it went on, that summer, pretty much every weekend, and then I got so busy with work, with advertising stuff that and I just was aged out of being able to recover after a night like that every weekend, But it was pretty remarkable. And honestly, like, this might sound kind of fucked up, but like when I first moved out to Los Angeles from New York, and I don't know if it was because LA was more of a hierarchical city back then, or because there truly were less great DJs in the city. Like hierarchical meaning I didn't have access to the coolest and best places, had no money, and I was young, and I was not like, at that time, Like it was hard to get into places that if you weren't, you know, of this stature in Hollywood or whatever, you know, like, or at least it felt that way. I don't know. But like, I didn't feel exposed to music the way I'd felt exposed to in New York. And you go out in New York and, you know, it's a Tuesday night and you don't know how your day is going to end. Like it might end at 2 a.m. It might end at 10 p.m. It might end up at 11 a.m. the next day. And you might be out with a Wall Street guy and a female painter and a chef. And no one really gives a shit, you know? Like, look, there are people that in New York still say like, oh, well, where do you summer? But for the most part, people are pretty fucking awesome. And, you know, LA has become that. But when I first moved to LA, I would say in my recollection, it was not that for me. And I felt there was something lacking. And so I had been DJing a little bit towards the tail end of college and whatnot. And I just leaned into it really hard around 98-ish, dating myself, whatever, who cares. And then proceeded to do it nonstop and became, I would say, somewhat obsessed with both collecting music and playing for people and sharing and reading a room and making people have fun and whatever. Like it's just fun. It's like there's this connective tissue. It's like, you know, that documentary, that mushroom documentary that came out like whatever, a year or so, or at least I saw it a year or so ago. And they talk about the connectivity below the surface of the network of whatnot, of fungi. You feel that when you DJ, you know, you feel a connection to the room of people, you know, jerks that wouldn't take requests unless it was the perfect request. But like, there's something really fun about you knowing what's coming next and it's the right thing and everyone responds and you keep escalating call it tension, call it joy, call it whatever it is at the moment in the room. It's fun, it's rewarding, it's incredibly rewarding, you know? And there wasn't as much of that, or at least I hadn't found it when I first went to LA. So I felt like it was a little bit of an obligation to do it. And to be honest, like I wasn't making, like I needed the extra money, you know? Like I needed to be DJing on the weekends to support myself. So yeah, it served a couple purposes for sure.
That's cool. Well,
yeah.
we'll
I'd be
put
happy
that
to send you
playlist.
the
We'll put that
playlist,
playlist in the show notes for sure.
Yeah, cool.
All right, cool. Well, before we finish up, do you have like a quote or a mantra or a motto or anything that's particularly meaningful to you?
There's a handful. One that at the moment, and it's quite fitting based upon the conversation we've had here today, is a Teddy Roosevelt quote that goes something to the effect of, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And I think that resonates with me tremendously at the moment. I mean, there's so many smart people in our business. There's so many smart people in all business, in the world, like at large. But I think caring and picking yourself up by your bootstraps and continuing on and valuing, understanding the having empathy and kindness for the other person, the person, your client or your employee on the other end of the spectrum, where you not just have the knowledge to know what necessarily the right thing to do is, but frame it in a way that allows everyone to take a part in it, right? And be a part and enjoy it and contribute and whatever. And I think there's certain people that I've worked with over the years, directors in particular, that stand out to me that almost always gave what I felt was the right answer. And then there's people that are great salespeople that maybe don't necessarily even give what I think is the right answer, but everyone lines up anyway, right? And the proof is in the result. But I do think that like knowledge is important, but caring is what puts it over the top, you know? So I think that's a really, really important aspect of things, you know?
Yeah, no, I love that. That's beautiful. That's beautiful.
And I think that like the humanity of it all in terms of that stuff and everything about our conversation today is like, maybe this is like, God, I don't know, like it might feel a bit wishy-washy and whatnot, but it's like at a time where everyone's talking about the A and I-ness of it all. And you know, I think what is maybe popping up in the whack-a-mole sense is the humanity and kindness and empathy, right? It's like at a time where you can find something in an encyclopedic way from anything that's ever existed, any thought or any idea or any image or any whatever, to say, well, my perspective on this thing and what I've collectively come to leads me to this idea or this notion or this whatever theme, and I'll tell you why, right? That is what makes us human. And I think tapping into that empathy and kindness and humanity is what's going to keep us employed, to be honest, you know?
All right. I love it. It's a good place to end there. Thank you so much.
Great. Cool.